This is the field of 68. I'm Vince Wolfram.
I'm Jojo Cavanagh in Auburn, Alabama. And this
is Straight Out the Jungle.
Welcome back to Straight Out the Jungle. My name is Vince Wolfram.
I'm Jojo Cavanagh.
And another Auburn win. Last night, it was a good game. But granted, there was times in the game where it was a blowout and times where the game where it got pretty close. But Auburn did end up beating Kent State 79-56 last night in Neville Arena. We were both there, and it was pretty fun.
Yeah, it was a 23-point win. It was the first time me and you were both be able to be on the court together. So watching that was super fun in Neville Arena. We're going to talk about the dunks later, but it was
we got a first row seat to the dunks.
Oh, yeah.
That was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I want to just kind of start off with Bruce Pearl changing the starting lineup. So we actually talked about this last week in our recap episode of Houston. And we talked about how Bruce talked about Miles Kelly as a starter. We all agree with that. I think everyone after his first game against Vermont was like, this guy could start. It just was, who is he going to start in place of? We had this discussion. It's kind of like a win-win scenario because everyone has kind of been playing their best game. So last night, Bruce Pearl started Miles Kelly over JP Pegues. So this is something that we talked about actually with Terrence Oglesby, where he said that, don't get me wrong, JP Pegues is a great player. He just wasn't sure if he was ready at that moment for the SEC. And so I think that Miles Kelly showed he was ready for that moment. JP Pegues hasn't yet. So I'm hoping that we can kind of see JP Pegues soon get in his groove, but I can kind of understand why Bruce chose to start Miles Kelly over JP Pegues. And I feel like you kind of feel the same way too.
Yeah, sure thing. There's definitely adjustments both ways, right? I mean, they both played in big moments, both played in tough conferences, but this year there's a difference with this Auburn team, the physicality, the speed, all of those factors sort of add up. And I think so far, Miles has been able to pick up that quicker just because he's been in the ACC. He's played against the Dukes, the North Carolinas of the world. He's up to that speed, and he was the leading scorer on Georgia Tech. Like, let's not forget, Miles Kelly was a baller at Georgia Tech. He didn't leave because he was bad. Like, it wasn't a transfer that left because the situation wasn't right for him. He was just going for better. And in the SEC, that's what it is. And JP Pegues, I'm not surprised it's taking a little bit more time. Not saying that he hasn't played in those big games either. Obviously, I mean, the guy's hit game-winning shots in the NCAA tournament. He's seen big games, but I think in terms of being a point guard, that piece is what's going to take JP a little longer. And not that he's been bad so far. I think he's been solid, but we know to the level at which JP Pegues can play. And I think it's going to take him a little bit just to get there and get fully comfortable in this big Power 5 SEC style offense that Auburn runs.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it kind of like doesn't help his case in a way that Todd Pettiford and Denver Jones have both been playing the 1 and the 2 dominantly. I think Denver Jones now starting as our point guard is kind of something that not a lot of us expected. I think Bruce kind of hinted at it over the summer that he could start there. And now that he is, it's kind of like, oh, Bruce kind of hinted at that. But yeah, I think that the fact that we have so much depth at the 1 and 2 position is something that is going to take us farther. And I'm hoping JP Pegues can soon find his groove. But we got Miles Kelly starting on. We'll see if that sticks. But I kind of think it's a good decision.
Those are all subject to change too. I think JP could have a great game. He could have 28 points against North Alabama on Monday, and it'd be an entirely different thing. That's the thing with these guards is they're all great. They can all be interchangeable, and it will just depend on the game, the matchups. If there's big guards, he's going to play Denver, and he's going to play another big guard. If it's smaller guards, maybe JP and Tahad are in there. I think it'll be all subject to change. And you know Bruce, he'll sub in and out a minute into the game. He doesn't really care who starts the game. I mean, Tahad, he hasn't started a game, but he started every second half of a game. So things like that. It's very simple. Plus, I don't think starters matter as much to Bruce as they do for groupings. I think he just likes to play guys who play well together.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah.
A guy we know that has been in the starting lineup for every game and will continue to be in the starting lineup. It's number 4, Johni Broome, obviously preseason All-American, Naismith Player of the Year candidate early. He did what Johni Broome does yesterday. And I think in the first half, it was a little different. The game was slower. It wasn't as Johni's speed usually is. That's why he only had 6 points in the first half. He finished with 18. I think what jarred him in the second half was the talking. When the game got a little bit closer, Johni got a little snappy. Johni got a little snappy, which is what we like to see. It's like They poked the bear, and the bear woke up and attacked. He was saying, "Give me the ball. I need the ball. Let's do it again. Let's do it." You could see him making these motions. Let's do it again. His eyes got big. He got whipped out the finger and started going. But once Johni started getting in that mode, getting the ball in the paint, there was no stopping him. Kent State's big men really stood no chance against Johni. He was just too dominant, especially from that left block, scoring over his right and left shoulders. Johni just had an all-star performance yesterday. And one thing I noticed too is he played 28 minutes, which is solid. I mean, he's getting good. He's getting in good shape here. He's getting up and down the floor well. He's running the floor, talking, playing his style of basketball, which is, I think, what Bruce wants too. He wants Johni to feel comfortable. He doesn't want Johni to fight for the ball, fight with the guards, fight with all these other players that are trying to engage themselves in the game in the same way Johni is. I think it's just flowing through Johni, which is a really cool thing to see. But he wasn't the only forward yesterday that just flat out dominated.
He was not. Yeah. Before I talk about the guy who's becoming my favorite player, as I mentioned, Johni, 29 straight games in double digits, had a double-double last night, 18 points, 12 rebounds. What more can you ask from the big man? He is delivering. Everyone expects the All-American to deliver, but he is just doing that and more. And someone who's doing that and more is Chaney.
And more and more and more.
And more and more and more. I mean, in Houston, he was the leading scorer going into the half. He did it again against Kent State. He tied Johni Broome as the leading scorer with 18 points, 3 massive dunks that got the jungle going crazy. Throughout 3 games, he's shooting 68%.
It's impressive.
So I think every episode I've talked about him. I told Vince I want to talk about Chaney again. I love talking about him. I just think his story is so cool. I sat in the press conferences and got to hear him and Johni talk, and hearing them both talk about each other, but specifically Chaney Johnson. Chaney Johnson first started off thanking God, his Lord and Savior, he wouldn't be here without him. Nothing but respect for that. And then also just talked about how, which is something that I mentioned last week, he's taking over Jalen Williams' spot. He talked about how because Jalen fit that role so well, he had a chip on his shoulder and he worked so hard. I'm going to throw it to Bruce right here where he talks about Chaney Johnson right here.
Chaney's our hardest worker. He is our hardest worker. He's in the gym all the time. And of course, he's a great student athlete. He'll be graduating shortly. Chaney, likes to work out. And so Ira Bowman is in the gym with him every day. And just getting better. He doesn't know any other way. And I think his confidence is up. His teammates believe in him. And he can sit down and guard. And you know what? You better bring a stronger to the rim because he's a freak show.
So as you can see, Bruce called him a freak show. He called him the hardest working guy on the team. I mean, just coming from D2 to here, I keep saying this over and over again, but I love watching Chaney Johnson play right now. He's my favorite player to watch. And I think it's just because not only is he so aggressive in the paint, he had 18 points last night. He also had a couple threes. So he's just showing he is versatile. He's showing he's a monster in the paint. He's showing he can make some threes. He's showing the dunks that he had. I mean, I think he had 4 dunks and I love talking about Chaney Johnson. I don't think I'll stop this season. I hope I won't, but I just love how each game we've had a player kind of step up. Miles Kelly, Vermont, Tahad, Houston, Chaney Johnson, Kent State. And I love just seeing that's how versatile this team is. And just Chaney Johnson, I love talking about him.
Yeah, you feel like it's somebody new every single night. And last night, it was definitely Chaney. I think he owned the first half. I think that if the first half were a jersey, the last name would be Johnson. It was all Chaney. It was like, okay, somebody get Chaney the ball. Can we get Chaney the ball now? Because Johni hadn't really gotten going yet. The guards hadn't really gotten going. But Chaney was going. And I'm going to pull a science word. Not a big science guy, but I think, was the fulcrum of the offense in the first. Yeah, I know. I graduated 6th grade. All right.
I was like, we're journalism majors, Vince.
Exactly. Come on. I took concepts of science. That's, I guess, worth something. Learn that there. But Chaney, he was just the rock of the first half yesterday and got Auburn out to that big lead, especially, I think it was a 22-6 opening run to start the game. That's impressive. No matter who you're playing against, then Chaney had the majority of those points. So to come out the gate like that, and for Chaney to be gaining that confidence, like Bruce mentioned, that's really, really important because we haven't seen a confident Chaney Johnson. Respectfully, we haven't seen it. He's just been behind people. It's just been the situation. But now that he's stepping in and coming into his own, I think we can get to see that confidence skyrocket.
I agree. And that's something that Johni Broome, in the media room, he was asked, how has Chaney Johnson, how have you loved to see him develop as a player? And Johni goes, I told him when he's confident, he is unstoppable. And just knowing that, you're All-American, has that belief in you, and just seeing Chaney Johnson's confidence skyrocket over this season is something that is just amazing to watch. And I know another player that you're going to touch on. I think his confidence is also showing more so on the defensive side. I think you're going to touch on Denver right now.
Yeah, I was going to say Denver Jones. I mean, Chaney and Johni, those are the big names so far that we've talked about. And in the starting lineup, Denver is, I feel like, a guy that goes kind of under the radar a little bit. You think of this Auburn team, you think of the 5 stars, the Tahad Pettiford's going off in the big games, Johni Broome, the player of the year, Chad Baker-Mazara, who's so animated. But Denver's sort of the laid back, silky smooth on the court. When he gets the ball, you just trust that he will do something good with it. But he doesn't get the props that he deserves, in my opinion, because he is the point guard of this team. Bruce relies on point guards, and he's a dude that played the 2 guard a lot last year and has stepped into that point guard role this year, something new for him, but he's been dishing it out. And like you said, on defense, he's a rock of this team too. He guards the opponent's best guard, and that is very, very tough. And you'll see that more and more become tougher when we start playing these tougher opponents. When we go to Maui and you get UConn and you get UNC and Iowa State, those kind of teams who play tough guards, you're going to see just how important Denver is on defense. But last night, 12 points, 3 for 8 from the field.
2 threes.
He's just shifty. I love his game. It's so smooth. It's just fluent. That's a word I would use to describe Denver's game. It's fluent. Even he had a play in the first half where he got the ball and he drove it, and he had a little up and under scoop that in years past are little guards that would have either been swatted or we wouldn't have even gotten there. But Denver, he just finds a way. He's fluid, gets to the rim and scores. That's the kind of player Denver is. And he just adds so much to this team with his ability to score, his ability to guard. It's just so much. And it goes without being said most of the time, which I think he deserves. Denver, shout out to you because you're playing like a beast, man.
Yeah, Denver is playing like a beast. And Bruce also mentioned, he said, like, in the last 5 minutes of the game, he is going to have his best defenders out there. You know who the first player he mentioned was?
Denver Jones. Denver Jones.
And last night, Auburn did not allow Kent State to score in the last 3 minutes and 23 seconds. Denver Jones was on the field. Bruce went on to mention Johni next, but that is something that Bruce Pearl believes, that Denver Jones is the best defender on the team. And just the way he can guard all of these players it's shown these past 3 games.
Yeah, and that's something Bruce has said. The quote I've been saying all year, can't sleep on Denver Jones.
I think I've said that every single episode.
Yeah, I think I'm going to get it in every episode of the rest of the entire season, unless, people wake up on him, I guess. I don't know.
Something that I kind of wanted to touch on, which you touched on in the beginning, is we dominated in the first, 3-5 minutes. I think we went on a 10-0 run. But going into halftime, Kent State came back and had a little bit of a comeback. And I think this happened to do with the fact that Auburn were shooting 25% from the 3, which in the past 2 games that we have watched, we have seen Miles Kelly go lights out, Tahad shoot how many threes. So I think this is something new that Auburn was able to see. And I don't know if it was so much of a concern, but I think that when we get harder opponents, which is something that I know you want to touch on, is against an opponent like Kent State. Granted, Kent State went into this game undefeated as well, but we can't have, what was it, like a 20-point lead and then make it go down to 2 or 3 against Kent State as an opponent. We have to be able to keep those large leads against those harder opponents if we get to that lead.
Yeah, I think this game is one that will open the eyes of the Auburn offense because they've played great so far offensively in the first couple of games. And last night, in that 5 minutes in the first half to about the 15-minute mark in the second half, it wasn't pretty. Truthfully, it just wasn't what it had been. Biggest lead was 21, and that was at the very start of the game. They got out to that 22-6 lead. But from there, they kept scoring, obviously, but the defense faltered. Kent State got to score more. And when the momentum switched, it did sort of roll out of Auburn's favor a little bit. Kent State got it in the second half, about 5 minutes into the second half, to a 41-37 game. After being up 21, you do not want it to a 4-point game. You just can't allow that. And against a team like Kent State, you can, because frankly, you're better than them. But in a game like Iowa State in Maui, if we beat Iowa State, you get UNC or UConn or Duke December 5th. That's not going to happen. And when you get to those leads, you got to learn to keep them. And I think that's a lesson that Auburn's going to have to start learning, have to start putting that together. When they're up that much, you got to keep the same energy, keep the same intensity, and make that lead grow, if anything.
I don't know about you, but I'm kind of happy that happened last night.
Me
I'm
too.
happy against an opponent like Kent State. We kind of realized we're not going to dominate on a 20-point lead every single game, especially when we get to Iowa State, Duke, possibly UConn. And I know they just played Houston. They know that they're not going to dominate every single game. But, we never had a 20-point lead against Houston. It was always a close game. So they always had that mentality. But it kind of, Kent State, hopefully it's kind of a wake-up call that even if you're up 20, you still have to play like you're down 4 or down 10. And so hopefully Kent State was that wake-up call. And I'm glad it was against Kent State and not against Iowa State, not against Duke.
Right. Yeah, I think they're very lucky in that aspect. And I guess they're lucky too because there's not a lot of games on the schedule like Kent State where you can learn, you can take lessons where you falter but still win. Because those games, they're going to be slim to none by the time we get 1 into SEC play and 2 when you're rounding out conference play. Because there's no easy games. We know that. Hardest schedule in the country in program history. There's going to be no time for that. So I'm glad they learned it last night. And I hope they do keep learning that as they move forward.
I agree. I think the SEC is, we're known to be the football conference, but the SEC in basketball this year
not so fast.
Adds to Auburn's hardest non-conference schedule and conference schedule. So, like I said, I'm very glad that this kind of wake-up call happened this early in the season against Kent State. So we'll see what happens when we reach conference play, when we go to Marion. What is that, like 2 weeks from now? So
yep, Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Yeah, it should be exciting. But before Maui, we do have another game. We don't play a game this weekend. No Friday or Saturday game for Auburn. So a good rest, especially after what happened on the way to Houston in Houston. That's a tough trip. And then to play a tough team last night like Kent State. They were gritty. I'll give them that. They were tough, beat up around the edges, but they made Auburn really compete for that win. But they take on North Alabama on Monday, 8 p.m. in Neville Arena. I think that should be a good game. North Alabama led by Jakari Lane. He's the leading scorer for the Lions. He's averaging 19.5 points per game. That's going to be hard to stop. He's a junior. He's got experience. So that's a matchup I'm looking forward to seeing my guy, Denver Jones, compete against. But I guess before North Alabama, what predictions do you have? Is there anybody you think is due for a big game? Anybody you think is going to go off on Monday?
I don't know. I'm kind of thinking it's going to be a new player. I've kind of like the trend where it was Miles Kelly, Vermont, Todd Pettiford, Houston, Chaney Johnson against Kent State. And obviously, Johni Broome is just kind of every single
he's
game.
Every game.
He's there. So I'm kind of excited to see which new player is next. I kind of like how it's a different player. It's kind of, I think, adding to the confidence of the team that one guy can have each different guy can have a game that they kind of go off and like they're kind of letting each other have it. So I don't know. Part of me, I want JP Pegues because I think
that's what I was going to say too.
Right, kind of have that chip on his shoulder that he is not starting anymore. So I kind of want him to go off against North Alabama. I want that for him. I want that for the team. I want that for his confidence. And I want Dylan Cardwell. Granted, we said it's not on the stat sheet. He has been having good games. He had 3 points last night, 8 rebounds, but I want him to have more of a dominating performance on the box score so that he gets the credit he deserves.
Yeah, and I guess one last stat I want to throw in there about Kent State. 3 bigs had 4 assists each. Dylan had 4, Chaney had 4, Johni had 4. We've talked about this before, that inside-out offense, it really got to working last night. And I think a guy that benefited was Chad Baker-Mazara. That's who I hope has a big game against North Alabama. He's had solid games so far this year, but we know how he can explode. He can go for 27 if he wants to. Plus, I know he had his little snack off the scorer's table last night. I hope that gives him some energy. Maybe there will be more snacks on Monday at Neville Arena when they take on North Alabama. But that's my pick, Chad Baker-Mazara for a big game.
Speaking of Chad Baker-Mazara, I think there's a picture that went viral. Everyone's like, put it in the loop of Chaney Johnson going for that dunk and then Chad Baker-Mazara. Like, I love that picture. I think they're comparing it to like the Heat Dwayne Wade picture, which is so funny. Looks like the Auburn version of that. But speaking of that dunk, Auburn went 6 for 6 for dunks against Kent State last night.
Better than Houston when we missed a couple.
Yeah. So 6 for 6, 100% on dunks last night, but the jungle was going crazy, especially the Chaney Johnson ones he had 4, the Chad Baker-Mazara one that kind of went viral. That was like on his head. Dylan Cardwell had 1 too, but we were just sitting there like, this game is like I know, just dunking all over Kent State. So it was just so fun to watch. So I'm hoping to see more
Dunk City. Let's put some dunks in here. Let's give you a little dunk montage. Here we go. spread the wealth too. They got a lot of guys dunking. And I know one guy, we've gotten some comments about it as well, about the plane situation. Jaheim Hudson and Ja'Kai Howard, the OTE alum, that the Dr. Duncanstein, they, I guess, were suspended. It wasn't announced that they were suspended, but they did not play. They did not play yesterday in the game against Kent State. They were on the bench. The vibes seemed to be good. They were smiling. They were eating their snacks on the bench. So it looked like the vibes were high and that everything was normal. But hopefully we get those guys back on the court soon. Bruce has not said anything regarding their situation and their timeline for return. But for Auburn's sake, I hope that it's sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I agree with you. It was nice to see both of them. We both went to practice, both saw them on the bench next to each other. So it's kind of glad to see it has not affected the team chemistry, the team vibe, but we'll see if they're back against North Alabama, unless maybe he's holding them off until the Maui Invitational. So that's kind of the guessing game right now. But yeah,
it'll be interesting to see.
Yep.
Yeah. And we will definitely keep you updated on that situation and all things Auburn basketball. So make sure you like, subscribe, follow us on Instagram. All those links will be down in the description of this video. Jojo, you got anything else?
Nope, but we will see you guys for our North Alabama recap episode, which is Monday at 8
p.m. That's a night game. That is a night game, to say the least. We'll be there. We will be following the game, so make sure to check it out on all of our socials. We are excited. Got a lot of things coming.
Yes, we do. I'm Jojo Cavanagh.
I'm Vince Wolfram. This is Straight Out the Jungle.